Welcome to Acting Shakespeare Lessons Learned. I'm Gordon Gidlund with the San Diego Shakespeare Society, and you are in for an enlightening and entertaining session. But first, a word from our sponsor. The San Diego Shakespeare Society is a membership organization, and our motto is We Do Shakespeare All Year Round. In addition to events such as this, we have a monthly open reading, the third Tuesday of the month in person at the Coronado Public Library. We have a great collaboration with the San Diego Museum of Art where we pair paintings and sculptures with performances from Shakespeare. We have, that 3 times a year we have a romantic Shakespeare around Valentine's Day, a midsummer Shakespeare, which is coming up, and a spooky Shakespeare around Halloween. We have a student Shakespeare competition. We've had special events around the sonnets, and we even have a project on mock trials where we take Shakespearean characters and put them in the dock, which and subject them to the rules of evidence. It's a lot of fun. And I'm very excited this year. This summer, I hope we're going to get into the movies, get into maybe a movie showing. We're looking into Grand Theft Hamlet. But anyway, if any of those sound interesting, please check out our website. Just Google San Diego and Shakespeare, and you should find us. And check out our offerings. And if you're so inclined, you can even join us. Individual membership of $35, family membership of $50. So that's that. Now, acting Shakespeare lessons learned. This is the fourth such presentation we've put on. Previously, we had speaker panels, and those are very enlightening, very interesting as far as the insights that are shared. But I found over the years getting 4 or 5 directors and actors together at once is quite a task. So I thought, well, why don't I get one talented actor who regularly interacts with other talented actors and in honing their craft? And that's a win-win. And luckily, I know one such character, and he is our special guest today. That is Nathan Agin, and he's an actor, an entrepreneur, and for many years he's been presiding over the working actor's journey, a podcast or show in which seasoned actors tackle an assignment and end up themselves learning something and also imparting their wisdom. They don't just do Shakespeare, but they do a lot of Shakespeare, and so that's why I thought it's so important to have Nathan with us today to impart his wisdom. So Nathan, if I could start out, could you tell us a little bit about your acting background?
Sure, Gordon. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you and the society inviting me to speak. I can only hope it's illuminating and educational and entertaining. I know I'll be talking for the next 35 or 45 minutes. Hopefully, people will actually get something from it. But my acting background, I did go to college at USC in Los Angeles. I studied theater there, and so worked on a variety of materials in college. After college, I stayed in LA, ended up connecting with a classical theater company, the Antias Company, still going strong. They were in North Hollywood. Now they're based in Glendale. And even more classics, Noel Coward, Shakespeare, Chekhov, Tennessee Williams, both, classical classics and contemporary classics. And that was a real amazing experience and great experience, not only for the camaraderie that I developed, among my fellow peers and actors, but it gave me an opportunity to observe up close what professional actors did, because the company often attracted actors who had, long theater histories or long regional theater histories or Broadway experience, and who loved to do, really challenging work. They would come to Los Angeles to get paid well through film and TV, but their first love and a long love was doing theater, doing these kinds of works. So, um, you know, though occasionally there might be a household name in the company, most of these people you would absolutely recognize. You've probably seen them in, one particular actor in dozens of things and all of that. So they populate the landscape of film and TV. And they were just really wonderful actors. So I did, a lot of theater with them, did a little bit of film and TV, and then um, very quickly I took a right turn and did a lot of traveling and traveled the world and all that. But I would say, well, about 5 years ago in earnest, a little bit longer before that, I started doing audiobook work, which is this is the space I would be doing that in today. And yeah, started about 7, 8 years ago, and then really kind of applied myself about 5 years ago or so to it. And so that's been my primary focus as an actor is through audiobook work. However, through the Working Actors Journey, which I started in 2017, that's been my connection to a lot of the theater and other acting work. I feel like I could answer about four of your questions, but I'll pause right there. So
Well,
that's kind of a brief overview of my acting.
well, in fact, that was going to be my next, the working actor's journey. What, let's how does that
Sure.
manifest?
So for quite a while before that, and this is probably common for people who are creative or entrepreneurial. You have different ideas of like, geez, I'd really like to do something with this. And for me, it was wanting to showcase and highlight all these great artists I had worked with, particularly at Antias, but not exclusively. And I had talked to people about like, well, maybe this theater company or this company could, start a podcast or do something. And like many things, you realize, oh, if this is going to happen, I need to do it. I need to be the one to do it. And so that's pretty much, how it started. And I was very fortunate that I did know a number of really talented artists who were willing to take a chance on the first season of the podcast and just say, hey, I want to talk to you about your life and your journey I really resonate with long form interviews and really getting to um, a real point of depth with people about their experience. So I did that for a few years, and then when early 2020 the pandemic hit, I again was like, well, I know a lot of really amazing actors that suddenly have nothing to do, and I had heard some other people doing some, uh, Zoom readings and kind of one night only things. And I was like, well, I think I could probably put something like that together. And within a few weeks of the lockdown, mid-March, which is, 5 years later, here we are, I was able to do that with reading a bunch of Do About Nothing. And did that a couple times with some really great actors and parts. And one of those shows is in its entirety on our YouTube channel. But I started to have conversations with a lot of those artists going, we are, it's clear we're going to be at home for a bit. So what do you guys want to work on? What is it? What would you want to do with this time? Because, even 4 or 5 months in, a lot of people had done readings and they found that it wasn't necessarily the most rewarding experience because, you just doing a reading is its own source of stress, and then you add in the technology of trying to act on Zoom, and we're still all learning this new tool and whatever. But what came out of it was, well, we have all this time. What if we go really deep on a really small amount of work? And that's what the work that's what our rehearsal room series became. Is we take one scene, which is about maybe 12 to 16 minutes of material, and we'll just work on that one scene for a couple hours each week for 4 weeks. So about 8 hours, really digging into one scene. Which I'm currently planning our next session, which will be our 40th workshop. So we've done 40 of these already, or will almost do 40 of these. 39 we've done, and it's great. And that's where I've stepped into the role almost exclusively as producer with this, but it has allowed me to observe. I've pretty much sat in on every one of the sessions. And so I'm listening to the directors, the actors, the conversations. And we've done, like you said, Shakespeare, we've done Chekhov, we've done Stoppard, we've done Hannah Cowley, um, we know we're doing Shaw this current month that we're recording. So a lot of material. It's been great. So again, I'll pause there.
Okay. And d- have you, by the way, I know that you were just mentioning it as on your website. You said nobody else seemed to be doing this, and
Mhm.
I'm just curious. By the way, have you noticed anyone else doing this since you've started, or?
I still haven't found anyone, and sometimes that's the entrepreneur's dream or curse or whatever you say.
Mhm.
Uh, Tony Shalhoub's monk would often say it's a blessing and a curse. There are times where I would feel like I would love to see another company do this or
Mhm.
take this on, and even if it's not a huge success that what I'm doing, but I see other people having success, that's great. Like it's getting out there. But and I think there are reasons most theater companies are stretched just trying to get their season produced and just to get people in the theater. And of course, now we're in a state where there's a lot of people, a lot of theaters struggling and some are closing. And so it's tough. And to focus on the work in the way we are doing it, where we're not beholden to ticket holders or subscribers or a board or anything like that, we can do things. We have more flexibility and more nimbleness than other places do. Um, so I know I have not really found anything like this. I mean, again, there are acting classes, but what we try to do and blend is the generations that you might have, newer artists working with people who've been doing this for 40 years, or directors who've haven't done a lot, but they want to try their hand. It's a great kind of playground space or sandbox space where people can test out stuff, they can try out stuff, they can, and there's no real pressure on the line. It's like, well, yeah, let's try this. It's not like, hey, we gotta sell at least 300 seats per show, so this better be good. There's none of that. So it's just about the work, and it's about um, uh, many different approaches too that I don't um, I don't impart or try to control. Well, how does the director approach this, or what method do the actors? It's just people come with very different approaches. Maybe not like different ends of the spectrum, but there are, and that's what I hope the podcast, the interviews have would show as well, is that for every actor out there, there are many different paths to this career. From growing up on a Caribbean island to growing up in upstate New York, and it's just all the twists and turns. Like it doesn't on some level, it doesn't matter where you began. It's just how do if you want to continue this and pursue this, you can probably find and carve your path there.
And it is impressive watching how you are able to get very experienced actors. For example, what
Mhm.
Deacon Matthews is one of your.
He did one of the readings with us. Yes, yeah.
Mhm. And then Reed Birney is
Reed
another.
was on. Yeah, Reed's been on the podcast, and he talked a little bit about his experience in a separate session about his of playing the character of Uncle Vanya. Yep.
Mhm. And I just think of Reed because I'm on Netflix currently have the movie The Menu where he is a horror
Oh,
movie where
sure.
he's treated
Yes.
rather badly. Uh, so, but and also and it is sounds so great. Some of your materials on your website you have interviews with people, participants, and younger participants. You say that is so neat that you are this generational matter where there are there and that causes them to kind of really up their game.
Yes, yeah, yeah. No, it like that was again. It was I could even tell at the time in my 20s how fortunate I was to be spending time with these people, and I wanted to try to bridge that gap for another generation of artists and actors, and especially in this internet age, you could literally be anywhere in the world and listen to or watch and learn from these people about what they've learned from doing this over their lifetime.
How has it evolved over time, the process, or is it pretty much kind of that same routine, that same kind of a close reading, I guess, approach you'd say?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I would say more so what's evolved are just the infrastructure and logistics of like how efficiently can I put this together and figure out, planning and all that. I mean, that's a big part of a producer's job sometimes. I mean, maybe sometimes you're the money guy or money gal, but other times you're just the one actually sending the emails and making sure the forms are submitted and whatever you need to do. And so you know, it really hasn't changed much. It's like, okay, get a director, get a dramaturg if I can find one, if there's one available for the material we're working on, cast it, and once everybody gets in the room, my job's done. I mean, it's like these people are here because they know what to do, they know what to work on, and when I say they know what to do, it doesn't mean that they have everything figured out, but they know they're comfortable in their process or they know how they like to explore something. And yeah, I mean, so it's not really anything that I have to dictate too much how it goes.
Okay. Speaking of dramaturgs and maybe getting more to Bill
Yes,
specifically,
yes. Hello, Will. Yes, yeah.
how, uh, and you've had the benefit, Gideon Rappaport has often been your
Hmm.
dramaturg, right? And
Sure. Yeah.
he is certainly the gold standard in that area. But I mean, the times, let's say, do you notice it's a real problem when you don't have a dramaturg, or do you have to kind of or do the actors end up? I would think over time, experienced actors become almost their own dramaturgs, wouldn't they? Or is that a
Well,
provocative question? I don't mean.
yeah. I mean, most productions certainly don't consider having a dramaturg on staff, or they don't think they have the budget for it, and so most actors, don't get the opportunity. Certainly, with smaller budget theater, just don't usually have the opportunity to work with one. And it's not like I've said I will see groups flounder without one, but you just see how much a dramaturg adds. That there's just this impartial, objective person that can say, well, here's what the context is around this, or here's why, it was phrased like this, or here's the reference, or here's what this really means, or here's another definition, or certainly when you're talking about Shakespeare and verse, like what if you hit this word versus this word? It sets up the contrast better. You hear the difference. So it's not to say that directors and actors can't do that work, but they're already thinking about so many other things. So having a dramaturg in the room allows that dramaturg to be, to focus on those things, all those technical things, and all those research things that the actors and directors, you know, uh, are just trying to do that and everything else. So I've never, like I said, I've never been concerned that a group didn't have a dramaturg. It's just sometimes, depending on the material, one isn't available. Um, but you do notice how much a dramaturg adds. And even if they're not, and dramaturgs come in all shapes and sizes and approaches. That some people are very focused on the words and being really coming in with that approach. Others are a little bit more fluid in terms of their conversation style or what they focus on, and so there can be a lot learned from both parties. I mean, in an ideal world, you would have two or three dramaturgs, and voice people on. There would just be a whole cadre of people that would be supporting the production. But just I think usually limitations of time and budget, uh, uh, just not everything is possible at the same time.
Because I can imagine too, let's say if the dramaturg is almost so experienced or so knowledgeable that people could say, well, gosh, this is getting too granular or too wow. I can't get the words out. I'm so worried about putting the stress wrong or putting the I am, you
Yeah.
know, that feeling.
Well, and even Gideon will say this. He said, he'll tell the actors, it's I think his particular phrase is it's your tuchus up on the stage, not mine. So as much as he might be telling an actor about trying to make it clear and what to understand about the line, at the end of the day you have to tell the story and you have to be present and do the best you can with it. I mean, he's giving you a bunch of tools and a bunch of things to think about. But it's it's not going to be him up there 8 times a week or whatever it is you're doing. So you've got to make it your own. You've got to internalize it. You've got to figure out what's going to help me, what's going to support me, and then just not worry about the rest.
Mhm, mhm. The scenes you pick for close analysis of looking back kind of over your website, you seem to be
Mhm.
a little more heavy on the histories and tragedies, correct? Maybe not so much the comedies. Is that fair, or how is there a process for picking out those scenes?
I've for a lot of it, I have left it up to directors. What is something you're interested in, or you might be, you know, you've always wanted to direct or you want to try to direct, I would kind of say, here's what we're going for. We're looking for an ensemble scene, usually more than two people, three or four, maybe five are good. And something where, everybody has something to do. And there aren't like, you know, I it's just a rough guess. I would assume there are probably mostly really great two-person scenes in Shakespeare. And so when you're looking for, well, it's got to be, three or four, or maybe five, and roles are got to be a little more balanced. There aren't like just tons and tons and tons of scenes that fall out of the woodwork. So we were a little bit more specific, and we would go to, maybe things that would be a little bit more obscure. I mean, I think about this great scene in the Scottish play where I think it's like Ross comes to deliver some news, like Malcolm and is it Macduff? I can't remember. But like they're feeling each other out. It's a scene that's often cut from productions
Oh,
um,
when
because
they're in
it's not
England?
advanced.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you're not advancing the main, the main Macbeth storyline, but it's this really, really great scene because you have these two characters that are like, well, where are you at with this, and where are you at with this, and then Ross comes in and tells them like, here's what's going on, and it's just great. But like that's a scene that people wouldn't think maybe necessarily to work on. There's the Richard III and scene, of course that's great, but we try to involve as many people as possible. So, there were like we've done the lovers scene from Midsummer. I think maybe a couple times we've done the Phoebe Sylvius scene from As You Like It. But yeah, you're right. There probably are more scenes from Caesar and King John and Richard II, Richard III. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just easier to find more group scenes in those plays. I'm not sure, but uh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, for example, have you ever had where a scene where someone remembers it from seeing it in production, but then you did it and it was kind of awful? Or they kind of misfired? It really, well, it didn't, well, I don't know why, maybe in that, maybe that's a strange question, but
I don't, you know, I one of the things that always surprises me, or I should say, continues to surprise and delight me, is the the depth of work. Like, where the scenes can get over 4 weeks. Um, you might do a reading the first week and it's pretty good and you think it's pretty good, but then by week four, it's like, man, they've really added a lot of nuance. And, I mean, in the canon, there's not really like any like bad scenes, and I mean, I do try to like read through them or at least go over them a little bit before we start. Just well, I'm talking with the director to and I had a director who wanted to do one playwright, and then he read the play, and then he's like, I don't think that. He goes, I don't know if that's going to work as well. Let's do something from this play, and so I also trust the artists, the directors themselves to kind of have a sense of that, of like, something that they, again, are excited to work on, something that they think has legs to work on. Um, so yeah, I mean, and I can't think. There's certainly no workshops that we've done that I'm like, okay, that will never see the light of day. Like that will only that
yeah.
will only live in the memories of the people who attended, and God help them for that.
Because I always hear this sort of debate sometimes, stage versus page, where the idea is, well, is Shakespeare literature or simply hard copy literature, or is it something I've heard it said, it can only come alive on the stage. It can only you can't just read it. You can't just read it at home. And but then others would disagree with it. No, it's great literature, great. You can read it all by yourself. It doesn't need to come alive on the stage. I don't know how
Um, I mean,
that.
I think it can be enjoyed reading it, silently to yourself. I'm not saying you can't enjoy it that way, but I do think there are a lot of things that you might not experience just reading it by yourself. You know, uh, Hearing different rhymes or different, words connected between different characters, pacing, timing, those kinds of things. Shakespeare gives you what to say, but he doesn't give you the how or the why. And if you're just, like any of us reading a book or reading a play, we're not necessarily thinking about what's the subtext here, what's the character motivation. You're just kind of reading the story, you're reading the narrative. But I think what a group of artists can bring to it, it's like, right, but what's going on? Like, what's going on underneath the surface, or what are the characters really grappling with? And especially when you have, humans embodying each different person, and you're not just reading them, like you're going to have very different lives and very different intentions and personalities and perspectives. So I think it does, it can't help but come alive. Even if you're just doing table work and just reading it, you're not necessarily staging it, but you just have people embodying those characters.
Mhm. Well, that's another good point. I listen, when you first started doing this, I tried to listen quite often, but then I kind of fell off and I tried getting ready for this. I watched again, and believe I told you I listened to some of the King Lear, recent
Hmm.
King Lear kind of production. And one thing you say there, it is so amazing how actors would say they'd really felt they'd inhabited or the character had inhabited their body, not they
Mm.
had inherited the character, which I thought was an interesting way. But especially with King Lear, most of the actors were saying how that family, it wasn't just a weird in the midst of midst of legend. This was a family
Right.
dynamic, an awful family dynamic, and
Right.
all of them could identify with that. And so then, yeah, that must be very rewarding when you get experiences like that, when it really, they are not just they're not just reading lines.
Well, and I think for a lot of actors, you don't want to make the work more difficult than it is. So if you can find a connection to the character of, oh wow, I totally have the same dynamic, for the girls, for the women playing the sisters. Like, oh man, I've had this same dynamic with my sister or my dad. And so you don't have to be like, well, wrestling or like, what would it be like, talking to my father and dealing? It's like, no, I've had these, maybe not these level of conversations, but I've had similar experiences that I can draw on of like, right, I'm not just a scheming daughter. I'm a daughter that has newfound power, and I'm trying to deal with that. And I don't want my dad to come live with me. How many kids have had that conversation? Like, oh, I don't want them to come live with me. Like, can they live with you? Or like, what can we afford? What can we do? So it's just at a higher degree. It's at a higher stake. So I think that's very exciting for people when they can, in addition to looking at the language, and in that example, looking at the first folio and what that can teach, they can find ways to really connect with the characters. I mean, I'm thinking of when we did The Winter's Tale, you have Hermione on trial, but at the end of the day, it's somebody that is, being accused of something that she didn't do. I mean, like, yes, this is the queen, but it's just like, you're so. I remember the director saying it's like snapping alligators all around you. Like you don't know which way to turn because everything's just coming at you so quickly, and there's no good path out of this. But you're trying to maintain your innocence and your dignity, um, but still kind of accept like if I have to go to jail, I'm going to go with my head held high because, and so it's just very, very human stuff. I mean, we've all been, I'm sure, in situations where, somebody thinks you did something and you're like, I didn't do, like, I wasn't trying to upset you. I wasn't trying to do that. It's just, again, Shakespeare takes it to a very high degree.
Mhm, mhm. Well, what's something surprising you've learned that you hadn't thought before about, let's say, a character or a play, or you think of something like that?
Um, I every time I do a session, it's almost like this one's my favorite, because it's just like it's the one in front of me. It's like they're all my children. But so I learned something from every one of them. I think uh, it's like I said with the Macbeth scene, um, oftentimes I will learn about the really beautiful, non-popular sections of plays, or I'll learn, something else about a character that I just, when we have this amount of time, uh, you, you just pick up on things, you hear things differently. I will say, we recently did some work on Tom Stoppard's Arcadia, and I played the character of Septimus about, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. And I joked with the group that there's often this mourning period that when you return to a work, you discover all the things that you didn't realize the first time you played it. And you're like, oh my God, how did I miss that? How could I not do this? Like, how did I go over this? So there were certainly things with Septimus that are just like, oh, okay, like that connects to this. And so there are definitely, and it's subtle things that usually the first pass through, you're doing something, if you're doing a reading or a production, you'll probably get the gist of the story. But when you play a character a second time, or if you're lucky a third time, you just find more subtleties and more connections where you're like, oh, that line right there, even though it appears four scenes before this, like there's a connection there. Like there's something like this might explain this, or this might unlock this, or he's or this character says this about your character, and I never really paid attention to that before. And so it just those kinds of things where, if you're a good detective to some degree, I think that can really serve you working on it because a lot of the groups, it's questions, it's conversation. It's not somebody comes in saying, okay, here's how you do Julius Caesar. Here are all the points you have to hit. Here's exactly. It's what's going on here. Like what happened before this? What does this character want here? What are they trying to do? It's a lot of conversation, and just usually there isn't time for that in a production. Um, but yeah, it's just continuing to ask questions and reread and read and read.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, let me get into some fraught areas.
Mm,
Would you say that there are some plays should not be produced anymore? And of course, I'm thinking of, and I've heard this said, like Merchant of Venice, or I
mm.
know James Shapiro, noted scholar from Shakespeare scholar from Columbia, says Taming the Shrew should not be produced anymore. It's just so misogynist, you can certainly probably think of Othello. You can think of Titus Andronicus. What have any of those kinds of discussions come up, or?
Mostly no. We did do a couple scenes from Taming of the Shrew maybe a year and a half ago, and we had a great director. Um, uh, she's working at OSF this season, and I think if anything, we didn't do the final speech or anything like that, but it's great to have these conversations. I mean, I think even if a theater or even we as a group found material problematic, I mean, I think it's still worthwhile to have the conversation. And, at the end of the day, it's like, well, okay, we can talk about that, but then what are these characters doing? What are these characters doing in the scene? The only time we've not gone forward with something was I think it was 2021, maybe 2022, and a director suggested the trial scene from Merchant of Venice, and we were all set to go forward, and then someone brought up that just given the anti-Semitism that was very rampant at the time, not to say that it's just disappeared, but it was kind of more in your face at that time, that it might not be it might not be prudent to go forward only because we didn't want our work to be co-opted by someone else's agenda.
Hmm.
We certainly weren't like, hey, this, yeah, we just wouldn't want anyone to say, look, this proves our point, or anything like that. That's not what we're doing here. This is about the work and spending time as artists to figure out what's going on and try to get a deeper connection to it. Does that mean that we could never do that? No, I don't think so. I think things shift and change, and if a director wants to do that scene, we'll certainly reevaluate that conversation and see if we think it's a more appropriate time. Um, I mean, I would guess, I haven't looked, but I would assume there are theaters still doing the full production out there. And there are a lot of, people that miss the mark about, like, what is The Merchant of Venice really about? What is Julius Caesar really about? Some people think, you wouldn't turn off a movie halfway in and be like, well, that was the full story. It's like, no, there's still the other half of the play. I mean, like, it doesn't go well for the conspirators. Like, do you remember that part of it? So, like, there's a lot of things, I think, that are to be learned, that people will tend to focus on, a very um, uh, 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 a very a crazy part of the play, or a very, like, I'm trying to think of the word. I can't think of it right now, but
Provocative part
yes, yeah, very provocative part. And they tend to focus on that as if that's the meaning the author wanted you to leave with, and it's often not the case.
with Merchant is maybe a good example too. They do focus on certain parts where there's
Sure.
even the whole point of Portia and her suitors and
Hmm.
so forth. I mean, it's quite, or even I often understand, like, the last scene is often not staged, the ring scene at the very end, which does
Hmm.
end up being almost like an I Love Lucy silly ending. And
Yeah.
they ended at the trial, Shylock thrown out of court, and that's very tragic in that way. And so,
And,
but it
and and
doesn't quite get to the whole play, really, in a way.
and we actually did, the very end of Merchant, and I remember it was just like, it was really great to work on that, and just like the heartbreak with Antonio at the end, of just like,
Mhm.
he's just kind of left as everybody leaves, and it's just like, huh, and just the conversations around that, like, what does this mean? I mean, these plays that end ambiguously, like, Measure for Measure, or whatever, like, Isabel doesn't give the Duke her answer, so it just invites conversation. I mean, we'll never know what Shakespeare intended, or the proper way to stage this, but it's a great platform to be able to have these discussions of, what do we think here? What's going on? What does the text tell us?
Mhm. Mhm.
Where what might Isabel or Antonio be feeling in these moments, based on everything that has happened up to this point? Like, Antonio, got his friend involved in this, all these things. It's just, so there's just, having the time to really think about it, I think, is a real blessing. And most actors, again, they're probably not going to get this on productions. So there's going to be an onus on them to do the work outside. Or if you are fortunate to, you can hire a text coach on your own, or hire a voice coach, or whatever. Like, do as much as you can. If you don't have time in rehearsal, if the director wants to immediately start staging it, or whatever, they do an afternoon of text work. I mean, it's just not adequate if you're doing, certainly, a Shakespeare play. Like, there's just so much, and we've proven that. Like, I'm waiting to find the scene where, after 1 week of 2 hours, everyone's like, okay, I got it. Like, there's nothing more to uncover. And it never happens. Like, people never run out of stuff to say. And many groups, they could probably go on for another 2 or 3 or 4 weeks
Mhm.
on the same scene. Like, there's some of it just invites so much conversation. So, you are only setting yourself up for success if you invest as much time as you can, and enlist, others, as much as possible, to help you. Those sayings of, you don't have time to make all the mistakes yourself. Like, when I played Richard III, I was reading stuff, I was watching stuff, I was listening to stuff, because it's just like, I don't have time to figure out every nuance of Richard. If I come across another actor that said this part really helped, or this helped, me, it's like, yeah, I want to know that. Like, I don't want to be at the end of this going, well, I did this all on my own and I missed 80% of these things. It's like, no, like, I'll try to make them my own, but I want to lean on the people that have done this.
Hmm. Well, that that really is a challenge then. I mean, I think of I've asked this question in prior acting Shakespeare sessions where people with Hamlet, they throw in a real Freudian analysis of it. And
Sure.
holy cow, who has time to do that? So I mean there's definitely a good point.
I
Let
mean,
me
yeah,
ask you,
it's
Nathan,
it,
one thing you said in the on your website too, you want to become a better person, or you can become a better person through all this. And how have you become a better person?
I would think, I would hope that it's the same kind of skills that I hope any of the actors walk away with, is that you learn how to communicate better, and that not only means becoming maybe more assertive or confident about sharing what you think, but being able to listen to other people and really hear, well, what's this person saying? And even if I disagree with that, is there some value in it? Is there something I can hear? Um, can you take direction? Are you flexible to hear what somebody else might be trying to get you to do, or want you to do? Um, can you be more empathetic with learning about these characters, putting yourselves in these situations? Um, Understanding, oh, okay, this reminds me of my brother, and he had this kind of situation, and maybe now this gives me a little insight as to what he might have been going through in that situation. Um, I think there are a lot of uh, opportunities for growth as an artist through this work, and it is, yeah, it's a little bit of a personal therapy dive where it's just like, why would somebody do this? Or I completely relate to why somebody would do this. And this, I mean, as you and I have talked, and you've um, done in previous sessions, Shakespeare in prisons is such a huge project for good reason. It really helps them, uh, from what I've seen, get in touch with different parts of themselves that they may not have felt comfortable accessing, or found had a healthy way to access otherwise. So I think, um, you know, I'm trying to live in a world where it's like, hey, things are, we all have challenges. So how can we just be nicer and kinder to everyone we meet, and like, if I'm hopeful that this work just gives people an opportunity to explore those things and explore those themes. But like, again, I think, um, communication, teamwork, negotiation, all those things, I think are part of a great collaborative experience.
Okay, and I'll make this my last question, and we can open up to the rest of the audience. And I know I heard this in one of the I think it was during the King Lear session where somebody mentioned they felt that Shakespearean opportunities are fleeting, are becoming less and less. And so, what would you say as a wise elder? What would you say to someone, let's say a young person in acting, who wants to go on this career path? I mean, and is Shakespearean training necessary?
Um, I think I think what people have said is still true. If you can do Shakespeare, if you can do Chekhov, if you can do the Greeks, you can do anything else. You can do an M&M commercial, you can do an independent film, you can do an industrial, you can do voiceover, because you understand, you've been challenged so much by material to figure it out, and to understand intention and subtext, that you know what you're going to say about a soap bar. It's like, okay, yeah, I got a lot of ideas for that. Um, Myself as an audiobook actor, uh, understanding, well, what are all the different ways I can use my voice for different characters so that not everybody sounds the same. Because I've had to, figure that out with other things, or do voice classes, or do voice work. you know, uh, I mean, that's a question. A lot of people who will just listen, they go, wow, how do you do all those characters? Or like, do you do different voices? And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, for me, that's part of the job. Like, that's the training as an actor, is understanding your instrument. And so, if I had a 30-second commercial or whatever else, it's like, yeah, of course I can do that because I'm doing all this long form stuff. I mean, if you can do a 9 or 12 hour audiobook, you can do a 20-second spot. Like, you can do that. Whether or not you want to do that is a different conversation. You might enjoy audiobook or long form stuff or industrials or educational work, voiceover. Like, there's tons of genres, but whether or not, is it necessary to do this? I mean, no, it's not necessary, but it's probably going to challenge you and test you as an actor that other material just might not. And again, it's not just Shakespeare. It's the range of classical texts out there, just material that's really going to push you and make you earn it. In terms of like, yeah, okay, maybe I didn't totally figure it out, but I really gave it my best shot, and I really tried to figure out as much as I could and apply myself as much as I could and involve myself as much as I could. So, um, certainly, there's always the conversation of art and commerce, and are more theaters doing musicals or celebrity casting and fewer classical plays? Possibly. We're not in the heyday of the '60s and '70s regional theater scene anymore. Um, but there's always opportunities to do these plays, and audiences always enjoy them. So it's just finding out how can you make that work. I mean, we're in a different time and a different model to figure out, okay, how does theater succeed and go forward from here.
Wonderful, wonderful answer. Okay. Well, at this point, the audience, and you're allowed now to unmute yourselves if you want, or if you want to put a question in the chat feature, that would be great. If everyone has a.
I'm happy to, speak more specifically to if people are looking for like specific ideas of things they could work on or things that they could take away for their acting work or those kinds of things. I'm happy to, try to address that as best I can.
I guess you've covered it all. Uh,
Yeah, I've answered every burning topic.
I always, these sessions. It always reminds me of the Far Side cartoon where there's the kid in class and he says, "Teacher, may I be excused? My brain is full." So it's one of those. So, if we have anything going on chat here, so. If one thing I mentioned this to you before, Nathan, and I always think it's so interesting. You mentioned the prison project, and uh,
Hmm.
and I mentioned you there was and if anyone, I highly recommend. There's a book called How Shakespeare Saved My Life, and unfortunately, I can't remember the author's name, but it was written by a drama teacher who works in prisons in Indiana, and not just check forgers, but murderers and so
Hmm.
forth. And she does Shakespeare there, and I know she was amazed at when she goes through some of the plays, the insights the prisoners come up with.
Yeah.
One thing it was just stunned her about Macbeth, where how he wanted to get Lady Macbeth involved in the murder more intimately, because according to this murderer, it's hard to murder somebody by yourself, and so you have to have somebody with you. It's quite an insight. And I know also
I
that's,
I wouldn't know, but I'll take his opinion. Yeah.
and also too, one prisoner was reading in Richard II the scene
Mhm.
where Richard's in prison, and the prisoner said that person who wrote that must have been in prison. They know
Oh,
what it's
interesting.
like to be in prison. And
Mm.
now we're getting the authorship question a little bit, which I promise
Right.
people I won't get into. But anyway, it is interesting how you can learn from prisoners. I mean,
Yeah,
these people
absolutely.
aren't exactly always considered folks that you would learn from, but.
And I think that highlights for our group, it's never been a top-down structure. It's never the director has all the answers. It's I think in any, the best kind of collaborative environment, everybody is on the same plane and you're willing to hear, even somebody who's right out of college or whatever, like they might have an insight. They might have something that it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I hadn't considered that. And so I've always loved that about the groups, that people are willing to take feedback from any direction. I think that's really, I mean, I think that's an important life skill anyway, that, whatever you're working on, whether in business or theater or wherever else, that you're not just like, well, I only look for feedback. I'm only going to listen to these people, not you, not, I mean, and of course there's a certain case of like, does this person have experience to be telling me? But they might still come up with something. You just never know. Like, again, there's often like, hey, I don't care if the stage manager has a good idea. Like, if there's something that like I'm missing because they're just listening to us do this over and over and over, and they might be like, hey, did you think about this? A lot of egos can get involved, and I think the more you work on this, and maybe a byproduct of the older you get, hopefully you can let go of your ego. Um, One of our most senior members, Randall Duck Kim, who's been doing lead roles since the 70s and maybe even a little bit earlier. He, I mean, at least the way he comes to rehearsals, he is so willing to hear, oh, like, oh, I missed that, or like he doesn't have it all figured out, and he's not trying to have it all figured out. He wants to continue to discover. And yeah, I think it's that kind of student mentality. If you keep that with you, that you're constantly questioning things, you're constantly looking at, why does this character say it this way? What's his, whether it's the word choice, whether it's the grammatical structure, whether, is he connecting to something or she connecting to something earlier, or, and there's a great, not exercise, but thought that one of the directors shares, where he says, especially if you have a long speech, you're looking at where might the character stop and what compels them to go on. Because it's easy to just memorize, like, oh, I have this whole speech, and, now is the winter of our discontent, and Richard is just going to lay out this whole thing. Well, what if Richard only has like the first couple things that he knows he wants to say? And then he keeps getting spurred on, maybe by somebody in the audience, maybe by something else that occurs to him. He sees something, like it just makes it a more interesting study, and I would think more interesting for the actor, if they're looking for that, especially in a dialogue, like what motivates you to keep going. And so I think it's, again, just continuing to ask questions, and really knowing what you're saying, what it means, um, not just what you think it means. And we talked a little bit about the dramaturg. They can certainly help you, but so often, and I find it even with audiobook work, I'll come across a word that I think I know what it means, or I think I know how it's pronounced, and then I'm like, let me just double check, and it's like, oh, it's not pronounced at all like that, and it actually means three other things that I didn't know, and okay, that makes sense, So it's just being willing. I don't know if you'd call that humility, or just, again, a student's mindset, that you're just, you're constantly a student slash detective mindset. You're constantly trying to figure this out, and be open to ideas, and just um, some of the most exciting scenes I've watched that we've done is when people really start to play with each other too. That you just, you start to have fun with the material. And even if it's a heavy dramatic scene, but you're just kind of relaxing into that. You're allowing yourself to just have fun with the other actor, because, otherwise, why are we doing this? Like, we're not becoming millionaires off this work. It's like, you do it because you enjoy it.
Mhm.
But if somebody can become a millionaire off this work, I would love to hear what they
Let's
do.
talk to them. Yeah. Well, okay, Nate, this has been wonderful, just a wonderful session. And for everyone listening, I highly commend you visit Nathan's website, The Working Actor's Journey, and it's on YouTube now too. You have that.
Yes, yeah, we have a lot of our sessions, almost all of our sessions on YouTube, as well as our podcast. So you can go to YouTube, Working Actors Journey, you type that in, or any podcast feed, you can find us there. Or if you go to the website, workingactorsjourney.com. That'll direct you to, most of what we're doing, and get on the email list so you can see what's coming up, and what scene is next.
And I find it's like you say, with the camaraderie, with the collegiality. It's like you're
Mhm.
hanging out, with a bunch of friends. It really is. It is,
Oh yeah.
an amazing electricity you have there, and how you're able to get. If I got five people together, they'd all hate each other. But I mean, you manage to get these people really respectful and it's really wonderful that way. So. Well, on
Thank you.
behalf of the
Yes.
San Diego Shakespeare Society, I thank you, Nathan. I thank you, listeners. And like I say, this will be posted on our website. And so if your friends who are still baking their St. Patrick's Day cupcakes, and they'll get to it tomorrow, or actually Tuesday. So anyway, well, thank you and adieu.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right.